welcome to Decent Christian Music Talk. I'm Eric McClanahan, known on Twitter as an Everglow for those of you who follow me. Here with me today is Jessy Ribordy, who you may know as the frontman of Falling Up and many other things, which we'll learn more later about all the things he's working on. How you doing today, Jessy?
How's it going? Pretty good. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
Thanks for coming on. Full disclosure, anybody who knows me knows Falling Up is my favorite band. So Jessy is kind enough to befriend me despite my constant gushing about his music. So I appreciate that always. So I was going to start off with a couple icebreakers. These are just things that anybody who knows me for more than, half an hour, I will probably ask these things just because I'm always curious about it. What is your favorite thing to drink?
This is gonna be really boring, but just plain sparkle water or LaCroix. We call it sparkle water because the kids are. I always feel like
Just the flavorless kind?
Yep, totally flavorless. And it's a weird thing. I really like to wait. Like usually, if I have something salty or like after dinner or whatever, I don't drink water with dinner because I feel like I like to wait until I'm extremely thirsty and then I just chug a sparkle water and it hurts really bad, but it's like the best thing. So yeah, that's my favorite thing. I guess a close second is coffee, but it's more because I have to have it or I get a headache. So
Right. Okay. What is your favorite color?
uh like forest green, like a dark green.
Nice. Last one. I know you've told me before that you don't listen to a lot of music now because you don't want it to seep into what you're doing or something along those lines. But who is your favorite music artist of all time?
Ooh, my favorite music artist of all time. Hmm, I would have to say I would have to say Philip Glass.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Interesting.
as far as composer, I mean, yeah, just it wraps around into everything usually.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will move on to the many things you're working on. I was telling Jessy that I was making a list of the things he's working on, and there's like 15 things, and I don't know how he manages all that he does along with family and everything. But we'll go Pete's Little Robot book first. Are you still doing physical copies of that?
Yeah, so my wife and I wrote that book, and Matt Smeagol is an amazing illustrator, and he has done a lot of work on that. And together we kind of started it during the pandemic, because we kind of needed an outlet to like work on something, and so yeah, that we released it digitally, and I wasn't super stoked about like having to do that, but at the time it was just, like we were pushing to some publishers and stuff and waiting to hear back. So we didn't want to like self print. So that was kind of why we didn't do a physical yet. Um, and but now it's looking like we're just going to self publish. So we're kind of getting things in line with that.
Talk.
And yeah, it hopefully will
Known
happen
on
this
Twitter
year,
as
and there's
Neverglow
going to
for
be,
those of you
a
who follow.
uh, uh, it'll be like an official first publication of it, since the digital one was kind of like, I don't I it was more for publishing, like we were sending it to publishers. So that was kind of the reason why we did that. But yeah,
Okay.
excited about that.
Awesome. I recently got the new Lore of Aethera soundtrack that you composed. Are you still working with Alchemy on things, or?
Yeah, I work with them on mainly music, and so like the first book, The Lost Druid, that was written. I created the overall lore of this idea, and then wrote the soundtrack, and then wrote for the book. For the second one, I had the overall lore and stuff, but I haven't done any writing in it. And then as far as soundtrack, I recorded. So it's primarily just when I like, have some time and when we come together on things. Um, but yeah, so that's where we're at with that. But the Dark Symmetry soundtrack, is that the one that you
Mm-hmm.
recently
Yep.
got? So that one should be out as well. I don't know how, like, what their Kickstarter timeline looks like. As far as like when they're gonna put it out for the public after the people on the Kickstarter got it. So I don't know what that looks like, but it should be out on like streaming services, within the year, I'm assuming. And then The Lost Druid also should be out on streaming services as well. So yeah, it should be like available for people to listen to soon.
Awesome. Um, As It Is Below is one of my favorite of your compositions so far that's on that new soundtrack. I love it.
Oh, thanks.
Um, okay, are you still working with Score?
Yes, yeah, actually very actively. It was over. I had kind of a scheduled Christmas break because I'm freelance with everything, and I my own boss, so I tend to like never really take off. Like whenever there's like a Labor Day or any essentially a holiday except for like Christmas and Thanksgiving, I usually work just because I'm always working. And uh, but this year I was like, I'm gonna schedule some time to like just take off. But during that scheduled time off, I had a trailer that I was working on. So that's been some pretty neat stuff to work with them. They're a great team. And yeah, it's usually like on the call stuff where like they'll come to me with some work. And and I just like jump on it if I have the chance and if I have the time. So yeah, it's pretty fun. A great team, really great group of creatives, and they have a lot of cool stuff they do in film and television. So
Is that different from the work you do with, is it Aika? Is that how you say it?
Ica,
Aika?
um,
Aika?
it's it's similar. Ica's primarily ads, and so I do ads through them, and then I do some ads through Score, but mostly it's like trailer, film, and television, and then there's a couple other music houses that I work with just kind of on a go to go basis whenever they come to me. Um, it's really really hard to keep clients as a freelance composer. Um, like you know a lot of so if, like a film director usually will have like you have your Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, or your Hans Zimmer, Christopher Nolan, and that usually happens because people have their one go-to person that they know like works hard and they know deliver like a lot of stuff, and so it's really hard to have a lot of those options available as a composer, and same with like a director or anybody in that field. Like when you're working with a lot of composers, it's such a like person to person basis, and it has to be really personal, and just the amount of work to keep up with that many people is really hard. So um the nice thing about those music houses is they control the clients and then they come to the composers when they're ready. So
Hmm.
um, it's kind of a weird process, but it helps when you have such a big amount of composers and such a big amount of people who need music and how to kind of organize it in the right way. So
Oh, interesting. Is a cymbal sound, is that also kind of the same kind of deal where you create music for clients?
yeah. So my buddy Julian, he asked me to come along. He was working at a different music house, and then he came to this one, and so yeah, that's been really neat. Same thing as well. They just have like everybody kind of has different um, uh, like sort of venues that they go into. So like Ica is more ads, and Score is more film and television. Um, and so yeah, there's just different kind of like avenues, I guess, that each of them sort of work under. But it's
Okay.
basically the same idea.
Okay. You're also working on, was it is it a TV show pilot or something along those lines?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been that's been a long time coming. So I created this idea. It's actually sort of a this is a loaded one because I get really excited to talk about it. And it's hard because I haven't really been able to, nor do I want to give too much away, or like lead anybody into a thought um, without knowing for sure what's going to happen. Um, but I will say that for Falling Up fans, um, old and new, it has this show, this idea is kind of the seed of everything Falling Up. Um, and it it's sort of a it's kind of wrapped in, I guess, the overall tone of what Falling Up was. I wouldn't say that it's like narratively the same thing. Um, but it, Stephen King has a quote in a book where he talks about a character who is an author in the book, it's Lacey's story, is saying that how he gets his ideas is he goes down to this pool and he fishes in the pool, and that's why all of his different books are Stephen King, or in this book Within the World, the author's books were all similar in tone, but they were all different, and it's because he was fishing from the same pool. So he wasn't getting the same fish every time, but he's getting a fish within the same pool. So I always try to use that as an example when I have projects that sort of cross paths, like River Empire, Gleamcatcher, Falling Up, and Calypson. It's just kind of like they're all different, but they all kind of come from the same pool. So Calypson is fished from the pool, and it's really kind of the big fish in there. Um, and there's a team behind it. It's been going on for a while. Ethan Gross, who wrote Ad Astra, he's a producer on it, and we've got a couple other people attached. And so we're we're trying to get that going. And it's sometimes it goes really fast, sometimes it goes really slow. But for years, my wife and I, who's also on the team, and her and I have written the pilot, um, have made many edits, and so we're ready for it to go soon. So when there is news, it will be big news, and but it's not always a promise that it's going to be this year, because I feel like every year I've been like, okay, I get an email and I'm like, all right, this is it, it's happening, and then it's like, oh, but it's going to take a couple months. And that's just the industry, I guess. That's what they say, is that it goes really slow and then it goes really fast and then it goes really slow. So I don't know.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And are you still working on a book about Falling Up and the history and all that?
Yeah, so I was gonna do a like a Patreon a couple months ago, and it's still not out of the like question right now, but I was gonna do that and have like a monthly episode of sort of what each chapter kind of would be with that. Um, because I have turned some of it into a book. I've written quite a bit of it, but it's very rough and just like scratched out stuff. Um, but I thought maybe telling it as a story would be a little bit better of approach, I guess, just for um, sort of like the timeline, because I do want people to hear stuff and whatnot. Um, so yeah, it might if it's a book, it's probably not going to be for several years. But if it's soon, then I would like to do maybe an audio version of it. Um, so yeah, that's the plan as of now. But it's a little bit less of like a tell-all, and it's more of like a behind the scenes from my perspective, which is I feel kind of unique when it comes to having a full band talk about whether it's on a podcast or not. Having a full band talk about like their experience, and then having one person talk about it from their perspective, but going into it knowing that like this is my perspective of it. And it's like How I Met Your Mother, right? Like it's like always through the lens of Ted Mosby, and that can become a problem when it comes to the way that we perceive things, because we have to remember that he's not like a reliable source of the truth all the time. And so that's kind of what I'm going into it knowing, and I think that it's kind of a neat spin on it. I hope that it would be, and I hope also that it's understood, like that makes sense to people, and that I'm not just doing a typical Jessy that is confusing and disconnecting.
I think it sounds fascinating. Um, Back to some more music stuff. I'm sure people would like to know if there's anything going on with the River Empires.
River Empires, we're hoping to be able to press it onto vinyl. Casey and I are always talking about um, doing the next thing with River Empires. Um, but that's about where we're at. I have songs, and and so I would hope that it could be at some point in my life, and not when I'm too old. Um, Although that might be kind of neat. But but yeah, I think obviously I was very overly ambitious, but I look at it like Sufjan Stevens, like he said he was going to do an album for every state, and he did what, like
Two.
two or one, really two.
Yeah.
And didn't he write two albums about like this one state? Was it in
Yeah, I
Michigan?
think so.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So that was, obviously something that when it's brought up, he's like, I don't remember his answer, but it's basically like, obviously I had those ambitions, but then things changed. So that's kind of where River Empires is at. I know I said 7 albums, and they were looking backwards. And I had a second album ready to go. But over the years, I've sort of, unfortunately, it kind of makes me sad, but I've sort of like picked that apart and used it for things. So I had I had this album, and it was, demos, and it was ready to be recorded. And then as time continued, I was like, okay, well, I'll use this melody, and I'll use this melody. And um, unfortunately, there's really not much left of it. Um, so yeah,
You all originally did CDs for that, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I have notifications on eBay and Discogs and everything. If one comes available, I want to snag it because I was out of the loop at that time apparently.
Yeah, I might have a couple. I have to check. I might have saved only one, but I might have saved 10. So yeah,
Okay,
we'll see if I can find some. Um, but
that would be awesome.
but yeah, I made that order. And then but one on that release, Witch's Blossom, wasn't on the album, and I didn't know because the person who mastered it, great mastering, Steve Hall, he just like missed it because there's so many songs, right? Like
Yeah.
I get it, it happens. Um, but he missed it. But then I also, when I listened through, I just again was like, there's so many songs I wasn't really paying attention, and that song wasn't on there, so it went to print. Um, so, anyways, that's
Wow.
kind of a unique thing I think about that album, is that it's
Yeah.
missing a song. Um, so I feel like it kind of makes it a little bit more rare in that realm. But with that being said, and I don't know if this is on your question list or whatnot, but CDs are, I've been really considering printing more CDs. I have a ton of like, let's see, Silver City Hours, Midnight on Their Ship, uh, some Your Sparkling Death, but like I could probably, like, self-titled, I don't have anymore. And and then River Empires, obviously, I don't even know if I have any more. So I was thinking about maybe doing some orders because they're much cheaper to print than vinyls. Vinyls are just insane.
Yeah. I don't know if I know you're not super active on Twitter, but I've been trying to get the hashtag CD revival going for everybody who, is into CDs and things, and kind of maybe spread the love a little bit and try and get, CDs at least close to enough love that vinyl gets these days. Because it's what I grew up with, and I'm kind of nostalgic about it. But it's also, I think it's more convenient and cheaper, like you
It
said.
is. Yeah, I think that like for me and a lot of people that I know, vinyls are they appeal to a different side of music, which is more of like art. I mean, rather than music, if that makes sense. Like the
Hmm.
having the cover as a bigger piece, having it on display, but then also having like something that's a little bit more, expensive, special that you keep with you, and versus like a convenient but like still collectible way of listening to music,
Hmm.
which I think CDs like the focus is listen to this music
Hmm.
because that's what I always remember about CDs and what I love about it is listening to the whole thing. Now, I still
Hmm.
do that with albums. Like I don't like to I don't have playlists on Spotify. I mean, I don't listen to Spotify just because I have certain values with it. I just have some issues with it.
It's
I don't mind.
understandable.
I don't mind, or judge anybody who listens to Spotify. I think it's great, and I'm supportive of it. But I personally don't listen to it. As far as like having playlists on Apple Music or on Spotify or anything like that, I don't like that because I just think it's too it goes down a rabbit hole for me of like not being able to really listen to art, musical
Hmm.
art. Um, it's just like, oh, this song and this song and this song, and it kind of in my brain it sort of builds these little connections that then I start to lose the interest in listening to an album, and I don't want that because I've noticed that before. If I've ever
Right.
like had a playlist or something, I'm like I get in that realm and then I'm bouncing around again, and I don't like that. I like to fully listen to an album. So
Yeah, with streaming, the temptation is pretty strong to just, if you get to one track that doesn't hit you immediately, to just,
yeah,
the next thing is a click away. Um, I think streaming's been great for me for discovering new artists, but when I find something that I like, I'll buy the physical copy, which once I buy something, even if I'm not listening to the CD, if I listen to it on Spotify, it's like, I purchased this. I want to get to know, this thing that I purchased, but I know everybody's not that way. And, I guess,
yeah, no, that makes total sense. As far as like from a fan base side of things, like Spotify and Apple Music, like there's nothing I hold nothing against anybody who's like listening to Spotify. Like listen away. That's great. It's awesome. My problem is with the actual people who run Spotify. I don't have any problem with people who listen to it. I don't even, you're gracious enough to do that, whereas you buy an album and stuff. But as far as listening to it, if you didn't do it, there would be no judgment, right? Because
right.
it's like it's there, it's available. I've chosen to put my stuff up there. I don't have to put my stuff up there, but I have a problem with the people who are managing it. Um, but uh, but with that being said, I think that an interesting idea that I had was if there was a service, a streaming service where like, because the downfall of CDs back in the day when we didn't have streaming services was like you listen to um, a song, usually a single from a band, and then you pop in their CD and all the other songs are different. They don't sound like the single, right?
Right.
And sometimes that was a bummer. Sometimes it was like, oh, I want to hear more of what this sounded like, and the rest of it doesn't sound like that. Sometimes it was nice because it was like, oh wow, they actually like have these really arty moments and all this stuff. Um, and but then for the majority of things, there's like you really discover more about that artist, and it's a positive thing. So I think that those are the bands that don't belong on Spotify and stuff. Like you want to listen to their full albums. They should have
Right.
CDs available and vinyls or whatever they need to show you their full albums. But it would be nice to just have a place where for bands like that have a single and then the rest of their album doesn't sound like it, so you can just
Yeah.
pick and choose the songs that you like. But maybe we belong on there to a lot of people, right? It's subjective. So I think that it's like people might be like, oh, well, Broken Heart, and none of their stuff sounds like Broken Heart. So it could be we could be on that list. I don't know, but I know my bands that would be on that list. And then I know ones out, right, that like I've really fell in love with their album because they had all these different moments in it, and it was different than just skipping around.
That's interesting. And despite my love for CDs, I am not against vinyl. I have Your Sparkling Death Cometh on my shelf back there, autographed by you. So I love to show them off. Like you
Yeah.
said. I don't know. I'm nostalgic about CDs, and I see a lot of value in them, and kind of feel like that's getting pushed to the side by the industry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think it is. I've sort of, my wife has had to talk me out of it many times, but I love tapes too. And I've been wanting to print some folio up on tapes, because they're inexpensive and I don't know, they just look like, a little bit more vintage and sort of up the alley of like something a little bit more mysterious because
right.
you actually have to like fully rewind and fast forward, and I think there's something appealing to me about that. Um, but I also know that people are like, don't waste your time with that. Nobody has tape players. We can get them at like, secondhand stores and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. Also on the vinyl, you just released Silver City and Your Sparkling Death Cometh, and you've done orders for Hours and Midnight on Earthship. Is there plans for any more vinyl, or is that kind of going to be the last of
Yeah,
foreseeable future?
we have plans, and it's not for sure, but it's our plans for this year are self-titled, um, River Empires, and sorry, something else on there. I don't know if we were gonna do a House Full of Caverns, but I think that was it for now, and we might do a second edition of one of them, but it just kind of depends on time and budget and stuff. Right now, ours is done, and it's gonna get shipped, and ownership is gonna follow. It's getting printed right now. It was just a little behind, um, but uh, but yeah. So those are on their way, and then we'll get those out to everybody, and then hopefully do self-titled, which will technically be the second edition. But the first edition, I it was on the Kickstarter, I think. That's how it came to be. Um, and at the time I didn't really vinyl really wasn't that big at the time. And I didn't know that there was like color options and stuff like that. So it was a pretty simple and straightforward approach. And if we do um, the second edition of it, it's going to be much more elaborate with some extra artwork and stuff on there. So hopefully it'll be
Nice.
worth it for people who got it already. Uh, but yeah, so
It
we'll
will.
see.
I have the first edition, and I will definitely buy a second edition. um, I have another CD nerd question that just popped up in my head. Will if you redo the CDs, will the bonus tracks be included, or have you not gotten that far yet?
Um, yes, I think they will. Yeah,
Awesome. I was so
I
excited
have
about
all the
Dark Speed
masters.
being
Yeah,
the
Dark
vinyl.
Speed, I feel like turned out well on there.
Yeah.
I was nervous about like because it was mastered separately and whatnot. But I think that it worked really well with like the tone of everything. Your Sparkling Death was actually mastered at a kind of a lower volume, like a little bit softer. Uh, and I didn't know this until just recently, but apparently um, it's nowadays like everybody wants louder and louder and louder, and like the ceiling has been pushed to the max, including like ads and trailers and stuff. I mean, they like I feel like it's so loud, and they're like, could it be louder? I'm like, how is that even possible? Um, but but with vinyl, I didn't know this, but the louder it is, the more your needle will jump, um, and it can skip way more with that. Um, because if you think about like mountains, right? If it's like too big of a mountain that it's crossing, it's gonna like jump up. Because when they actually press it, like they're pressing sound waves, which is I don't understand how it even works. It's magic to me.
Yeah.
Um, but But anyways, the idea there is that your Sparkling Death, I think, sounds really good for vinyl because it was mastered at a little bit softer of a volume.
Interesting. Now I know what mastered for vinyl means when I see that on on some records. Um, June years, anything going on with that?
No, nothing's going on with that. That was a project that we always started just based on one song, and so I haven't had a chance to get back to that and write for that, but um, likely that song is getting trailerized, so I'll kind of be revisiting that track.
Awesome. Um, what about like are you working on any uh solo stuff other than like scores and things like that and outside of Gloomcatcher? Like I think you released just an instrumental uh album a couple years ago, I think, of compositions and things that weren't tied to soundtrack or anything.
Yeah, so I am working on something that I it's it's kind of confusing. So I wrote a screenplay called Manzanita, and it follows and I don't know if this was in your list. So if it is, then I guess I'll answer that, or if this is an
It
additional
wasn't.
one. So Manzanita was like Calypso is this kind of it's a series and it's sci-fi and you know if it gets made and the main hurdle with everything is like it needs a budget. It needs a pretty big budget. So that's where you have to have these sort of people attached to it that can help get that. Um, Whereas I really wanted to just write something a little bit more simple and something that could be done on a low budget, something that was like pretty limited and just focused on the story. So I wrote this script called Manzanita, and it follows a sort of a um, alter ego of myself, um, is a songwriter. His name is Wilder Snow, um, and he goes to write a concept album. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give away what potentially is going to happen on um, something that you probably will ask about concerning Falling Up. Um, and But basically, he goes to write a concept album, and this it's it's a version of what I write, but just with new songs. And yeah, I guess I can't really explain it without giving away too much. That probably means nothing and is very confusing. But essentially, it's going to be an album that I'm writing as Wilder Snow. So I will be sort of like a Eminem Slim Shady type of situation. Um, and so that album will be not me, but Wilder Snow.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
so yeah,
Anything with Gloomcatcher?
Gloomcatcher, no. Yeah, that's kind of just been not enough time for that at the moment. Um, and some of those songs have been for the Manzanita project because the style is a little similar.
Okay. Um, what about anything for the Crashing's 20th anniversary?
So Crashing's 20th, I don't know what like specifically having to do with Crashings we will be doing because I kind of thought it would be neat to find, we have some songs, mainly just one that was sort of half. It was a demo to the label. It wasn't a demo to the so we got signed and then we were going to do our album, um, and so we went in with Aaron Sprinkle to record one song, and I don't know really why we did this. They said it was a demo to see if we're ready to do an album, which maybe was just like, can these guys actually record to like a tempo or whatnot? Which is funny because we recorded our demos and like I didn't understand. I'd never heard of that before, and honestly, nobody really did either. Like the other bands we were talking to, they're like, we didn't do that. We just went and did our album. So we did we did Escalates, which was actually called Crashings at the time. That song, we did a version of that, and it was by far my favorite thing that we recorded in that era. And it was much different than what ended up on the album when we re-recorded it. I'm trying to find it. I don't have it, and I nobody has it. So I would like to try to release that for Crashing's 20th. As far as having to do with Crashing. But as far as Falling Up, if you're asking about Chilling Alpine Adventure, then I can wait for that if you.
It was next. It's actually that was my next things. A lot of people watching may not know about it, despite my tweeting about it many times. I think even the last time I posted it, people commented, "Oh, I didn't know about this." So apparently, people aren't just glued to our Twitter accounts, believe it or not, or Instagrams or whatever. So if you wouldn't mind explaining that.
Yeah. So so something without being super long-winded, but something that is very important in a lot of the freelance work that I do with film and ads and stuff is like whatever they want for music, the most important thing is feeling and tone, like what you're trying to convey with this. And that can usually trump all other things like instruments or structure or whatever. Like if it has the right feeling, then it's the right piece of music for the spot or the movie or whatever. So I was thinking about Falling Up because it was officially ended in 2015. When it was ended in 2009, that was primarily out of frustration on my part, because I felt like I just couldn't. I was on a specific journey, and it was a fight every step of the way, and I was discouraged by that fight, and so I left it, right? And I was just like, I'm done with this. But then I realized that I didn't want to end it that way, and I felt like I was giving up, right? So then we came back and we did more albums, and then ultimately in 2015, I just had a feeling deep inside that like I needed to end it for other projects, but there really wasn't any other explanation other than like that was what my instincts were saying, was just like to end Falling Up officially. So we ended it right with the self-title, and I felt like it was a really nice way to go out, because I was happy with it, and I felt like I had pretty good reception and whatnot. But then I was thinking about that feeling of what I was trying to convey with Falling Up. And I was like, everything else with Falling Up is done. The albums, the tours, the, just, hey, we're in a band. This is my band. It was all done except for that feeling. I couldn't fight it. And I just felt like I still try to write about that feeling in Gloomcatcher, with River Empires, with my scripts and all that stuff. But it was the strongest with Falling Up in one particular way. And so I was like, I don't think that should end. I want to continue that, but I don't want to continue Falling Up or revive it again. So I know that might take kind of some mental gymnastics to get through, but I think that when I sat down in my room at the very beginning, writing for Falling Up, I had this feeling, and that's what I was trying to convey. And it went through all of the different band members that made albums awesome, and like, all these different pieces to the puzzle that ultimately made what I was trying to convey audible. But with that being said, it still ended up and I don't mean this in like a self-aggrandizing way or anything, but it still boiled down to me in my room trying to convey a feeling, right? And so that was the journey that I went on, and I was like, I still am on that journey, and I don't want it to end. So I wanted to be able to have an outlet for that feeling, and but I didn't want to revive Falling Up for the third time. So this was the compromise that I made, which was that um, it was representative in the song "The Chilling Alpine Adventures" on Fangs, and I just couldn't get away from that. Um, I guess tunnel that I went through with it. And so that's why I decided to call it The Chilling Alpine Adventure. And this album that we're going to be releasing in 2024 um, is essentially a hallway. Uh, Falling Up is a room on one side of the hallway, and The Chilling Alpine Adventure, like I guess official album, is on the other end of the hallway. And this album that we're going to release is the hallway. So it would officially be the first The Chilling Alpine Adventure album, but I kind of look at it as more like a transition album from one room to the next. And then when we're in that next room, um, I don't know what that room is going to look like yet, right? So it could be the official first album or whatever of The Chilling Alpine Adventure. But on this, it's still going to say The Chilling Alpine Adventure, right? That's what it's called.
Right.
But I guess the way that I'm making sense of it in my head is it's a hallway between Falling Up and this, because maybe people are like, dude, just call it like the last Falling Up album, but it isn't the last Falling Up album because that was in 2015, and it's hard to explain like when I go in to write something, the how I'm categorizing that in my head and how like my heart is funneling into it. Um, and this is different. Like this is a different journey, and so it's like I can't feel like
Yeah.
I'm actually that. It's not Falling Up, but it's not the next thing yet. This is like a journey of transition.
Interesting.
I feel like I can't write something without feeling something, and in order to finish a project, I have to give in to that feeling completely. So I don't know, because I do have a lot of people who will message me still and to this day, right? And they'll be like, um, Crashings was like had Bible verses on it or whatnot. Um, and and so are you guys going to do that again? And I always get kind of confused by that question because I feel like has nobody else ever done something in their past that they don't do now? Like, am I the only one? Like, I can't be the only one. So that's where I'm like, I mean, just think about your life. Like, I don't know anything about your life because you haven't shared that on albums or in a book or whatever. Um, so, but I have. So then that's all out there for people to see, right? It's more obvious for people to pick it apart. Anyways, I know I kind of sidetracked on that.
No, you actually
That's
were
not our
leading in.
field.
No, you were leading into something that I was actually going to ask about, and that was if the transition to a new band name had anything to do with trying to distance yourself from the scene that Falling Up were kind of fairly or unfairly pigeonholed into at points, which is the Christian music scene. Did the name change have anything to do with that specifically?
The name change, no. Honestly, maybe like 5 years ago, maybe when we ended in 2015, I could say, um, that that was a frustration of mine. But as the years continued, and my children get older and stuff, um, I start to see things that I'm like, people are like, the whole point is that of like freedom and free will um and choice is like that people should just do what they want to do, right? And like in that, if the Christian industry is the way that it is, you're always going to have certain bands or certain labels or certain people that are going to be one way and they're going to be rigid. And then you're going to have bands and labels and people who aren't, right? And then everybody in between.
Yeah.
So like, so that's the whole of the construct of the industry, because other industries are the same thing, you know. Every artistic industry has the same uh mentality in it, where you have one side and you have another side and you have everybody in between. Um, and so I don't care that if I'm considered on that in that group of people, that people are going to judge or assume that I'm like super extreme on one side or whatever, right?
Right.
Um, because that's their problem, right? It like if they're going around assuming that somebody is the way they are because of, you know, how they're categorized or what, or whoever put them in that box, um, and not by the fruits of who we are, right? So
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. So um, I've kind of let go of that control because I realize that I've had to let go of it. But I've also come to more peace with it in terms of I don't really care when it comes to like our past that we were considered a Christian band, because I was on a journey that was inevitable. That's where I was at the time, and where I'm at now is due to all of that. So I'm actually very thankful for that process, and that it really was an adventure. Um, and so where I'm at now is that I would rather um, hold it up and say like I'm proud of what this ended up being, rather than trying to deny so many things that like our past was, you know, a part of. Um, because I think that if people really listen to what I'm trying to convey in music right now, I think that they can understand where I was at the time. And I know that sounds like a riddle, but I think that if you go back and you listen to it, I mean, I was almost everything was a question at the in the first albums, um, and I have questions in the later albums, but there's a lot more action and there's a lot more like this is what's happening now, than what if this or what if that. Um, so
Okay. I think for me personally, the making this a transition album, like, you know, Falling Up presents, like just the way my brain works, like that makes it so much easier for me to, you know, coming into it, you know, all the things about Falling Up that resonate with me. It's like you're saying it's okay to bring that to this, you know. And so just for me personally, I think it's a brilliant move. It makes a lot of sense to me. Um, what is there a certain release date that you all are aiming for?
that is sort of up in the air right now. The process is going strong, I will say. Um, it will be in 2024.
Okay, awesome.
um, so, but as far as like even a season, I don't want to speak on it too much. Um, but it will be. It is like, you know, a train, a runaway train right now. So
Yeah.
it really just sort of poured out. And I think that it's going to be really neat. I'm excited to share that part of like my process and my journey that I think kind of wasn't, it was hidden a lot with Falling Up. And so I think that with this new project, it'll be out in the open a little bit more. Um, but also, you know, not shy of mystery, I guess, because that's sort of the point. Like I never wanted to be too prescriptive. I absolutely love all of the lore and people who are like piecing things together and stuff. Um, I think that's really cool, and I'm super supportive of it. But as far as like being specific, I never like to, because I want people to have, you know, if somebody's gonna listen to a song on a road trip and remember that road trip, I'd rather have them do that and be like, this song is about,
Mhm.
death specifically. And then they were like, should we listen to this at a road trip? Because I want to listen to something happier. Like, I feel like it should just be what you feel when you're listening to the music. And I hope that it's different for everybody, but I also hope that with this new project, you can feel a lot more what I'm feeling, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Can you tell us who else is in the band?
Right now, I've got Nick Lambert, and Daniel Elder, um, and Jeremy Miller. Um, and that's who's working on stuff currently with me. And so I don't know yet. It's growing, and changing as this develops. Primarily because, again, I didn't want to go into anything being prescriptive or too
Mhm.
specific. Like, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
It really, it doesn't quite feel like the first album of the Chili Alpine Adventure, right? I feel like that's maybe where the separation will be in that when it comes to like the group of people who are doing it. Um, so, but there are some surprises, and I don't really want to talk on specifically or give any hints, but I think that people are going to be really excited about those surprises. Um, and I think that it's going to be really pretty neat. I'm very excited to share it. I've been, you know, wanting to like release something right now, but I also have to tell myself that because I didn't want to do that going into this project. I want it to be whole.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want it to be pieced. And personally, I always feel a little bit weird about that. When like I can listen to half an album before it comes out. Because I feel
Yeah.
like, well, it's like opening half your presents on Christmas Eve and the other half on Christmas, right? Which is fine. People do
Yeah.
that. Um, but I just feel like, you don't have a bunch of presents under the Christmas tree on Christmas,
Yeah.
or just open them all on Christmas Eve. So that's kind of where I want to be with this album. Is like I want it to be, all at once.
Yeah. I love that. And me and I know several other people who I talk with about music are not fans of bands releasing half of their album as a single before the actual album comes out. So
Yeah,
even when they do, I'll listen to the single maybe once, depending on how strong my willpower is at the time, but once or twice
yeah.
at the most until the album comes out. But anyways, think there's going to be any shows for the new band?
We're talking about so a friend of mine who's also he was in A Dream Too Late. Actually, two of the guys that were in A Dream Too Late, Cody and Tyler. They have they took over during COVID. They took over like a it's called the Growler Garage. It's like a pub that has just like a huge tap list of beer. They took that over and they like transformed it because it was basically like shut down for COVID. And then they used that momentum to buy this abandoned building across the way in downtown Albany, and they're turning it into a venue and a bar, and it's going to be a much needed thing for Albany to have a venue because we used to have a venue called the Venetian, and it was really successful for like a couple months, and then it died out. And this was like when I was in high school. And then since then, a church bought it, and they just have like their church services in it, which is fine and great. But it just kills me every time because it's like it has such an amazing sound system in there, and it's such a cool stage, and it was such a neat place to have shows. And we played some shows following up when we came through the town because Adam, who was in our band, um, he uh, he knew like the pastors and stuff. So we were like one of the only bands that would play a show there at the Venetian. So, anyways, long story short, these guys are building this venue, and so we've been talking about playing there. So if we do any other shows, I don't know, but the most likely right now is a show there. So, but if we do the show there, I would definitely like to try to record it because I think that'd be pretty neat.
I would be very tempted to make a flight out out there for the show. So if it's okay with you, um, people, I tweeted that I was going to be talking to you and asked if anybody had any questions. I might read a couple of them. So can we
Yeah, yeah,
answer a couple of them real quick?
absolutely.
Um, okay, so somebody says, I know spending time in nature has been a big influence for your music. What are some of your favorite spots to be in nature and which have been the most influential in creating your songs?
There's a spot. Well, I guess the the beach out in Newport. Or okay, so I'll be a little bit more specific. Out near Manzanita, because Manzanita is a town in Oregon on the coast. Um, so that area has been very specific to a place that I love to just think about visually, um, and that I've been, therapeutically and um, uh, I haven't specifically written there, but like been inspired when I was there. Um, and then um, the forest, it's called Dunn Forest. It's like probably about 20 minutes away from where I live. Um, I just always walked in those trails, and that's primarily the spot where like I've um, gone to get some inspiration. So I guess that's probably pretty like you know I guess common, like two places, a forest and an ocean. But in Oregon, those are the places that to me have been inspiring to think about
Okay.
and to be.
Um, got one that says, for people unfamiliar with Falling Up, what album or song do you think is the best introduction?
I mean, I'd say on average, it would probably be Captiva. And if if they're if I'm trying to dictate what they think of us, I would obviously say like either um, the Fangs or self-titled. But I think as a fair negotiation of what Falling Up is as a whole, uh, Captiva would be right in the middle of like everything. And I think that that would give them enough on this side and enough on this side to kind of feel the whole thing out.
Okay. Someone asks, why is it called Hotel Aquarium? I feel like I've heard you answer this before somewhere.
Um, I just I was in a really weird phase of like something that I was trying to find visually in my head and I couldn't. Um, and I was like juxtaposition, but like I mean, I guess everyday things too, like but the weirdness of everything, everyday things. So there's a lot there that of why I was in like that phase of visual, I guess, like culminations. But Hotel Aquarium, I just kind of came from that. Like, um, it's not like there obviously is there can be a aquarium in a hotel. I've seen them before in the lobby, um, but also it's kind of just weird enough to be like kind of bizarre. So I don't know. The title really has nothing to do with the song, as with most of our songs. But then I allude to them in different songs,
Mm.
so then people think that there's some kind of gravity there. But a lot of times it's just because I'm just playing. I like that's like my sandbox to play. So
Something else I feel like I've noticed that since Falling Up called it quits in 2015, like the fan base has gotten stronger and more passionate. Like, do you get that? Do you get that sense? Like the Discord is super active. Yeah, I see
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
things on Twitter. Um, do you think there's anything that has specifically caused that, or do you have any theories?
I think it's just simply because it isn't a thing anymore, right? Like, and that's also what I didn't want to really ruin when it came to the vibe of it, because I think that that's what everybody does in Hollywood and all that stuff is like, oh, this movie wasn't big when it was, you know, in theaters. Like, look at Dumb and Dumber. It was like, it wasn't big at all. And then it had a cult following. And then they were like, oh, let's capitalize on this. Once it grew to the point, like everybody was talking about Dumb and Dumber, then it's like, let's do a second one. And then it just fell flat, right? Like, but that's with almost everything that they're redoing. They're trying to like bank on this nostalgic vibe, but they're missing the point, and it's that it was nostalgic for a reason. Um, and and so I think that you know, I mean, there has been some good like redos and stuff. Um, but as far as I think that that's the reason why it, you know, it has a bigger following now, or at least feels like it just feels like a little bit more high energy and like buzzy, you know. Um, and I don't want to take that away, because I think that there's something to be said about looking back and finding things, you know, when you're looking back more clearly on it. Um, and then like trying to cash in on that. Like I didn't want to make it seem like I was trying to like gain anything from that. I wanted to keep it special. So that's also kind of tying back to why this is the Chilling Alpine Adventure, and it is, the feeling is coming over, but they're like, I still want people to look at Falling Up like it was in the past, and that's where it is, you know.
Okay. I think that's all I've got for you. Do you have anything else that we didn't cover that you want to mention?
I don't think so. Probably I that I shouldn't. I just shouldn't say things because I'm long-winded, and then it's just more confusing than anything. It doesn't make any sense. Um, so I'm still working on other things, and other projects as well. But I, you know, I'm stoked that people are excited about stuff and still sticking around even when I'm, you know, probably don't make any sense to things. So um, I think that in my later years, I've realized that, you know, when I was a kid doing Falling Up and whatnot, like I kind of was just doing whatever I wanted. And then as I got older, I started kind of looking at things from more of a perspective angle. And I think that that has caused um, myself to feel that like I am confusing a lot.
Hmm. I think I think people love that you're confusing, judging by all the people in the Discord trying to figure out what you meant by almost everything you've ever said in a song. But
Well, that's good because I feel, I hope I'm not annoying. I'll, honestly, I'm kind of self-conscious of it because I don't, whenever I say that, like that I'm confused, I'm not trying to be like arty and cool and stuff. I'm like legitimately, I feel like I should apologize because I don't really like it. I feel like I've had success from it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I've always watched other people. I looked at other people and been like, man, they're just so like, they say the thing that they're gonna say, they know what they're gonna do, and I like am, you know, lost in my own. I just am lost. Called
no, you're not confusing. You've answered all of my questions very well.
you know, that's good.
So I appreciate you coming on. Um, and I guess that'll be it for us. Shout out to Kylan Savage for editing and making this video look cool. And see y'all next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric.